In South America, in order to understand the Incas and Inca civilization, it's important to understand the physical geography of this part of South America. Here you have, along the coast, you have these very steep mountain ranges, the Andes, and then you have a narrow strip on the western edge of desert. The whole Humboldt Current comes from Antarctica, and it sort of keeps the waters of the Pacific quite cold. These are very rich fishing grounds. Most of the rain actually falls in the Pacific, leaving the coast quite dry, which is probably good for the soil. It sort of preserved the nutrients of the soil, and the soils were less likely to be leached. You do have these rivers that come down from the Andes. These relatively short rivers do have oases. These oases, with irrigation, can support quite large population base. And in the Andes, you have this vertical economy where anything about 11,000 feet, anything below 11,000 feet, you can grow corn. Anything above 11,000 feet, you can grow potatoes and quinoa. Up higher, you have, outside the farming zone, you actually can raise llamas and alpacas with fodder there. The Incas, they were a relatively obscure tribe in the Cusco region up in the valleys of the Andes, and because of their favorable location, they were able to conquer these provinces and create an empire that stretched from Colombia, Ecuador, all the way down to northern Chile. The founder of the empire is Pachacuti Inca. Pachacuti Inca began this military expansion, conquering and incorporating these provinces through threats, through invoking divine aid, through fair promises, and through military conquest. The Incas, they were able to unify this empire because they, with language, they spoke Quechua, which is still spoken by many of the indigenous populations in the highlands. The other thing I think that's quite impressive about the Incas is their infrastructure. This was a way for them to incorporate this vast empire in the highlands. The Incas built roads. Some of them were paved, some of them were stone, to connect the administrative centers of the empire for messengers and for armies to move through. They had causeways over swamps. They had suspension bridges over steep gorges and valleys. They even had pontoon bridges, which allow them to cross rivers. The other thing I think that's impressive, of course, is they were extremely good builders. They're known for the adept use of stone, and you can see this in Inca sites such as Machu Picchu. They didn't have a writing system, amazingly, but they did have a way of keeping records through a knotted cord or string known as a quipu, which was colored to differentiate different places and people and items. They didn't invent agriculture up in the highlands. Agriculture was probably diffused from the lowlands, and it was brought up to the highlands. But they did expand on it and made improvements on it through irrigation, through terracing, to prevent runoff in the mountains, in the valleys during the rainy season, to protect their fields and pastures. And the social unit of the Inca state was the village. And you have sort of these kinship groups known as Ayala. Several of these kinship groups actually came together to form a village. The leader of this kinship group probably owned the land. The Mayan lord tapped into this sort of mutual aid, self-help type of organization that existed now with temple and now placed on temple and state lands. And the relationship that the Mayan lords had over the peasants was reciprocal. It was based upon gift giving and reciprocal gift exchange. I think there's this idyllic, almost utopian view of the Inca society, which sort of contradicts the numerous rebellions that took place that were brutally crushed. And I think scholars sort of view the Incas as almost having a socialist empire, having almost a welfare state. But I think it also anticipates totalitarian governments in modern times. The Incas had the most advanced metallurgy among Mesoamerican, South American civilizations. They're also known for producing this beautiful pottery and wool. Wool came from alpacas and the llamas. They had these very large storehouses where the rulers kept food and these items, and they would often distribute it to different segments of the population. They wanted these communities to be self-sufficient, so they encouraged self-sufficiency, and just to sort of keep the population placated.